I'm a cancer survivor, actually. It took me 2 years and 8 doctors to get a proper diagnosis with uterine cancer. I got in the stubs more times than Roy Rogers. And every doctor that I went to said something different with these kind of subtle symptoms that I had. I knew I wasn't feeling well. I knew something was wrong, but what? And of course, the doctor that I went to because my leg was bothering me terrible, and I remember that, I had read, a book, this actress, what's her name? Anyway, I can't remember, but she had said that she had leg pain too, and I thought, well, what is this about? And they said you have restless leg syndrome and drink gin and tonics before going to bed. And then my stools started to change, and they said, oh, you're eating much too much spinach and cut back, on the roughage. And then my breasts got very, very hard. And the doctor said that, I had the breasts of an 18-year-old, which I do. But there I was in need of roughage, going to bed sloshed in some vain attempt to cure myself. And ultimately, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer with the very small in-office test called an endometrial biopsy that doctor number 1 said I was too young for. And, me like an idiot, I didn't say, well, why? What would that prove or disprove? I was just so thrilled to be too young for anything. So 8 doctors later, I take that test. And even though even this doctor, I was on 4 different hormone replacement therapies over the course of the 2 years because everybody thought I was perimenopausal, that I had early menopause. And this is the interesting thing that most people don't realize with cancer is that at the earliest and most curable stage, what I call the whisper stage, it mimics far more benign illnesses. So if you go to a doctor with your symptoms, very often you're at risk of being misdiagnosed. And since nowadays, much of the medical community subscribes to this philosophy, if you hear hooves galloping, don't look for zebra because it's probably a horse. You will very often be misdiagnosed. And the woman with ovarian cancer, for example, at its earliest and most curable stage, looks almost exactly like irritable bowel syndrome. And when I meet a gal that says, she's been diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, I say, well, honey, I hope that's what you got. But for a moment, step away from your, gastroenterologist and go to your gynecologist and rule out ovarian cancer, because that is one cancer you do not want to be misdiagnosed from. And, the reason why we lose loved ones to cancer is almost always due to late-stage diagnosis. If you catch it on arrival, 95% survival. So why are we all getting diagnosed so late in the game? And this is something that started to pique my interest because, I can't just get cancer and get well. I have to kind of turn it into a cottage industry. And there have been many silver linings to my experience with cancer and many, many life lessons, and one of which is turning pain into purpose is extremely healing and helps make sense out of the senseless. So when I was told that I had to get a radical hysterectomy and I hadn't had children yet, that's a difficult operation for any woman, but for one who had never had children like myself, it's a particularly bitter pill to swallow. And I'm kind of like Miss Control, and I was, Miss Superwoman, and I was Miss Caregiver to everyone. And this very quickly became my opportunity to A, ask for help, which I was not good at doing, and B, to also think about how I can turn these lemons into lemonade. And so the first thing that I did was write what became the New York Times bestseller, Cancer Schmancer. And it took me 4 drafts to write it with a sense of humor. Because one of the things that I also learned, the first one was very bitter. I felt very betrayed by the medical community and by my own body. And it seemed so unfair and so wrong. But, 4 drafts later, I struck a chord that rang true with the readers. And what I learned and remembered as I kept writing was that side by side with pain lies joy. It's there, and it's our obligation to not make a bad experience, whatever it may be, because nobody leaves this planet unscathed. And so what we do with it, how we grow through it, and what becomes of us as a result is what makes all the difference. So I wrote the book, which was very well received. And when I went on my book tour, I met tens of thousands of people at any given time. And what I realized was that my story was not unique, even though I wrote the book with the intention of having what happened to me not happen to other people. And then I realized what happened to me happens to many people all the time. Misdiagnosis, mistreatment, and as a consequence of that, late-stage diagnosis for many, though fortunately not myself, who was still in stage 1 and now 11 years well. Thank you. So I feel like I got famous, I got cancer, and I lived to talk about it. So that's what I'm doing. And I've really made it my life mission. And everything that I do now is to keep helping to pass on the necessary information and educate people. So people would rush the stage. I went on the lecture circuit, because that's what you do when you have a best-selling book. And people would rush the stage after and say, well, how can I help you? I agree with what you're saying, because I began to formulate an idea, which was stage 1 is the cure. Why aren't we all getting diagnosed in stage 1? We have the technology. What's the problem? Where's the gap there? If we all got diagnosed in stage 1, then most of us would live. So what's the deal? Well, big business health insurance gets in the middle of that a little bit, because there are tests that aren't even on the menu at the doctor's office. Lack of education is another problem, because people don't know what the early warning whispers of the cancers that may affect them are, and the tests that are available, so that they can become better partners with their physicians. And so one of the things that I started to think about was, well, stage 1 is the cure. We have to transform from being patients into medical consumers, because we put more time and energy into the buying, selling, and repairing of our automobiles than we do our own bodies. And I don't give anyone power of attorney over my money, so why should I do it over my body? I shouldn't, and neither should you. So as we started, entering the 21st century, it became clear that the old school thinking of the 20th century was fast becoming archaic, and a new mode of thinking had to be implemented. And so the Cancer Schmancer movement was born. And that was an effort and a vision of mine to galvanize people into becoming medical consumers, taking control of their body, recognizing the early warning whispers, not putting their head in the sand, because at the cancer's earliest and most curable stage, that's when you can deny it. But the day will come when you can deny it no more, and then it'll be too late. So what you really have to do when you know something doesn't feel quite right is to say, well, this could be nothing, but God forbid it's something. I have to go check it out right here and now, because I have to stay alive and well for my family. And if I catch it on arrival, 95% survival. So this was all part of the beginning phases of Cancer Schmancer with stage 1 is the cure effort. But then what happened was, the more I became entrenched in being a health activist and advocate, I went to Washington and became extremely instrumental in getting some legislation passed, because all roads lead to Rome, and today Rome is Capitol Hill. And so the first Gynecologic Cancer Education and Awareness Act got passed by unanimous consent, which means all 100 senators said, yes, Fran, we'll sign on to this. And that was a great feat for me. And at one point, I swear to you, I sent out an email to 10 different senators and said, let's not make this a battle of the balls, because the only ones that lose are the ladies. And so ultimately it got passed, it got signed into law during the Bush administration. I got written up twice in the Congressional Record for my efforts, and then was appointed Public Diplomacy Envoy for Women's Health Issues by the US State Department, a title I'm proud to continue to hold in this current administration. Thank you. Well, I started to get onto this JAG because I never quite settle anywhere. I keep thinking ahead, and I have this crazy, visionary thing that always makes me keep striving. And as Robert Browning says, a man must make his reach greater than his grasp, else what's a heaven for? And I thoroughly live my life that way. So I started to think, there's been billions of dollars funneled into trying to find a cure for cancer ever since Nixon waged the war, and there is no cure. So what's wrong with this picture? And it never quite felt right to me anyway, because it's sort of like closing the barn door after the horse escapes. Even if you find this miracle cure, it's not going to stop you from getting the cancer. It's not going to prevent the cancer from mutating into a whole nother cancer that we have to find another cure for. So what is the deal here? Is money being put into research because, maybe that's what pharmas support? Because what we've really ended up with is the ability to live longer chronically ill. And who needs that? I mean, it's better than the alternative, but I think there's even a better alternative, and that is prevention. And I got into this JAG where I started to think, what is causing the cancer? Why don't we just figure out what's causing the cancer and eliminate that? Wouldn't that be better? But, I very quickly realized that might actually cut into some people's profit margin. And, that's a problem. So, but that doesn't, stop me, because if I believe in something, I'm just going to forge ahead. So my organization, Cancer Schmancer, started to develop this idea that, since 95% of cancers are environmentally caused. So listen to that fact. 95% is environmentally caused. Only 5% is genetic. So let's not even talk about that. The bulk of the cancers that we get is because of lifestyle, entirely. And the thing that we have absolute control about today to diminish our risk of cancer is our home. What we bring into our home, what we clean our home with, what we put on our skin, personal care items. The skin is the largest organ in the body. It's not a shell, it's a living, breathing organ. And yet, each and every day, we put toxic carcinogens on it. And it does absorb. Things absorb into the skin, because I have a transdermal estrogen patch ever since I had my hysterectomy. So I know that things do absorb into the skin. And if I didn't have that, I'd go, wah, crazy. So I'm very grateful that I do have that. And so every time I put something on my skin, I think, well, what else is seeping into my skin? And how is my skin reacting to all this stuff? And why is it happening? And what am I putting in my mouth? What am I eating? What are these pesticides? What are these hormones given to our, livestock? What is it that we are doing on a daily basis that we can curtail? So the kind of trash cancer program was born, which is what I'm working on very aggressively right now, to kind of reach out to every single demographic, starting from very small children, leveraging the success that the nanny has today with kids that weren't even born when I did the show. And incidentally, that generation is the first generation in human history to be predicted to not live as long as their parents. To university kids who feel like they're invincible and immortal, and God bless them, if they didn't, there would probably be no wars, because who else would go? And, and then moms who buy most as the largest consumer in the home, and all of this. So the jig is up, basically. And that's what we're working on right now. Because once you wake up and smell the coffee, it's hard to go back to sleep. And what I'm doing with Cancer Schmancer is to start an all-points bulletin to every single American, because we are a beacon for the rest of the world. And I recently came back from the Clinton Global Initiative, which is a big convention in New York, and people come from all over the world, heads of states and leaders of, NGOs and all of this stuff. And I was lucky enough to be there and participate. And we're at one of the sessions talking about women's global health. And everybody sitting at the table I saw water in plastic bottles, which is very bad. That's pristine water put in a toxic vessel. Very bad. And we have to stop doing that. We have to stop looking at that. There was a whole thing that came out of Cornell University that directly connected plastic bottles with breast cancer. So, what we do, the choices we make are of vital importance for diminishing our risk of cancer. We can increase it or we can diminish it. And what I'm saying to you is everything that you bring in your home, everything you clean your house with, everything you eat, everything you put on your skin, you should think about. Because men use on average 6 to 8 products a day. Women use on average 12 to 15 products a day. And that is every age group, from formaldehyde in No More Tears baby shampoo that they're putting on their little heads, lead in lipstick. Do you know how much lipstick women eat off their lips in a year's time? Men who are putting on this like XXX extra dry stuff under their arms. One of the most efficient ways to get toxins out of your body is to perspire. And somewhere along the line, we've been fed this bill of goods that we shouldn't perspire. So we're putting this stuff on, this chemical stuff that's holding the toxins in. And more men are getting breast cancer and wondering why. My boyfriend was using this stuff, and I said, sweetie, I'm a health activist. You can't use it. He said, but I'm going to sweat. I said, yeah, so go into the bathroom twice a day and wash your pits. What do you want me to tell you? It's like everything old is new again. We have to stop thinking that we've taken ourselves so far from nature and what's natural for the human experience. We're killing ourselves. We are literally killing ourselves with what we don't know and what we're doing to ourselves that we are turning a blind eye to. And we have to stop it because the jig is up. And the third leg of this is policy change, because once again, we have to go to Washington. It's every American's civil right to be able to go to the supermarket and know that what they're buying is toxic-free, or at least have the choice. Not to put anybody out of business, not to make anybody have to change their formulas, but to have to prove that they have a product that is actually carcinogen-free so that they can get a certain government seal of approval that this product is carcinogen-free. And the consumer can go to the supermarket and say, oh, well, that has the seal, I'll buy that because that has the seal, or not. But at least to be given a choice. So you don't have to go to MIT to be able to understand what's on the ingredients list. And incidentally, 80% of what's on the ingredient list of personal care items are still unknown as to whether they're toxic or not, and in what quantities, and what they are when they mix with other products that we use. Because we're so busy doing this all the time, it's like this amalgam of stuff that we're inundated with: radiation, toxins, chemicals, pesticides, hormone inhibitors, hormone enhancers. How much can a little immune system take? And then when it's all said and done, be mindful of the fact that when you stress, you're compromising your immune system. So and stress is going to happen, we live in stressful times, but be aware that if you don't do something to bolster it right at that moment, you might get sick, you might get a cold, or you could get a disease. So, we have to start kind of thinking of ourselves in conjunction with the planet and our lifestyles. We're not superhumans, which is what I had to learn when I had my cancer. We're not separate creatures from the animal kingdom, from nature, from the planet in which we live. We're all one huge living organism, and we have to start making more healthful, more natural choices so that we can live more healthful lives for ourselves and our families. And so I encourage all of you to leave here today thinking about that, be mindful of that. Go on to trashcancer.org and find out more about what we're doing, but also we're partners with a group that will tell you products that you're using, whether they're good or bad according to them. And join the Cancer Schmancer movement because you can be proactive. And let's skin this cat, but let's do it in a way that makes sense. So don't wait for some big research to happen, because odds are it's not going to happen. The country is broke. And then big business really is happy just moving along the way it's going. But we as consumers can shift that. We can turn this boat around because we have the power of consumerism. And if we come together in that, then the message will be loud and clear. Because at the end of the day, all manufacturers really want to do is sell. They don't care what it is. If you make it clear what you want, then they'll go along with that. And elected officials, hey, newsflash, all they want to do is be reelected. So, then if you make it clear what it is that you want, then they'll go along with that because basically they want to be reelected. So it's an exciting time. It's the early 21st century, and historically, the beginning of a century is the most exciting time for new ideas, for fresh thinking that sets us on a trajectory for the rest of the century. Here we stand. It's only 2011. We're 11 years into this century. We here are at the beginning of this century, and we have the capability of making a difference, of shifting the direction. We stand on that precipice. So in a few years to come, when we have proper labeling and we can pick out things that are actually healthy for us, sustainable for the environment, organic, we will look back at this time when 1 out of 2 men and 1 out of 3 women are getting cancer and say, oh my God, what were we thinking? And these will be the dark ages. So I encourage you to lock elbows with me. I hope that I've impressed upon you that this is something that we can change for ourselves and our families today by making different choices. Don't try to be perfect. Nothing's perfect and no one's perfect. But little by little, make different choices. And you'll be doing that for yourself and your loved ones. And I appreciate you being here. I thank you very much. And that's it, folks.